always, I just wanted to say thanks again for sitting down with me. I know this isn't always the easiest thing to do because I'm asking you to remember quite a bit in a very short period of time, but again, this isn't about me. It's about my kids and grandkids and great-great-grandkids someday, hopefully. So, Mom, we're gonna just start off this interview kind of with, tell me about, well, first of all, give me your full name so everybody knows who we're talking to.
Well, I'm Bonita, Geraldine Neer, and most of the time I go by Cherry. I still go by Donnie, and
So how come Donnie?
well, the story I heard is that some of us children had trouble pronouncing words and stuff, and Mom called me Little Darling, and Jack couldn't say it, so it came out Little Donnie, and I have it. And now we're in our 60s, going on our 70s, and I'm still being called Donnie by some of the family.
So where were you born at?
I was born in Tulare, California, January the 2nd, 1941.
So Mom and Dad's names?
My father is George Franklin Burgess, and my mother's name is Oni Pearl Lancaster.
And so where were they from before they, guys moved to Tulare?
They were both from Oklahoma.
And they moved to California when? About what year?
Let me see, Jack was born in 1937. Shirley Mae was a baby when they came out, and she was a couple of years older than Jack. She passed away after they got to Oklahoma. I got to California, so I would say, I'm not quite sure, sometimes in the 30s, because Jack was born here. So it had to be 36, 37,
Okay.
35, 36 maybe.
Okay. So, what about children? Yeah. What about your children? How many children?
I have 4 children. I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. I have only 1 daughter, and her name is Catherine Doreen, and she was born November the 5th, 1958. I got Robert Gerald, my firstborn son, and he was named after his father and after myself. Robert, and then Gerald after the Geraldine, and he was born August 31st, 1960. Stephen Burt was born November the 7th, 1962. The Burt part was named after his dad's brother, Burt. It was just my husband, Bob Schoonderwoerd, and he had 1 brother, Burt Schoonderwoerd. And I married Bob Schoonderwoerd in October the 19th, 1957. And we were married for 10 years.
And then you remarried later.
Yes, I eventually remarried in February the 16th, 1973, and had the 3rd son then in September the 27th, 1975.
Okay. And that was?
Michael George Neer, and my second husband was George Clarence Neer.
So it seems to be a thing, it looks like, with middle names being named after dads or sons or brothers or somebody.
Yes.
It's pretty common, huh?
Yes.
Because George's dad was Clarence Neer.
Yeah,
right?
Clarence Neer.
Okay. So, as a young girl growing up, obviously you grew up in California. Where'd you go to school at?
Oh, we went to lots of different schools. My father did farm work. He worked for different farmers throughout Tulare, California. And I think also when he first got here from Oklahoma, Chowchilla, Hanford, California, around the Central Valley here.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of times they furnished us a home. So we changed schools often, moved often. But I can remember Wakena School was where I started at. And graduated from Walnut Grove. And my brother Jack and I were probably from the 5th grade on, we're in the same classes, 4th or 5th.
And
he didn't like school much, so he was held back, and we went to school together a lot, and went to Tulare High School, Union High School. And in my freshman year, during the Easter vacation, we moved to Hanford, California, and I went there. Didn't start my junior year because I was 16 and got married, and came back years later and graduated from adult high school and Hanford High School.
Wow. So how many kids were in your 8th grade graduation class?
There was 3 of us. My brother and I and a girl named Anita.
Big classes, huh?
It was a big school. I think we had 40-some children in that school, and we had 2 classrooms.
So how many brothers? Now you say there's Jack, but I know you came from a fairly large extended family. So how many brothers and sisters did you have?
There were 4 brothers and 4 of us sisters, and that lived. Mama lost 2 young children, one as an infant, a few months old, and then Shirley Mae at 1 or 2 years old. So she actually had 5 boys and 5 girls. And she didn't get married till she was 21 years old.
Wow.
Did you want me to name my brothers and sisters?
Yeah, if you can.
I'll try to start with the oldest. We have Robert Franklin, was the firstborn, Wanda Faye, Dolores Maxine, Shirley Mae, Jack David, Bonita Geraldine, Georgia Laverne, Carter Lee was the baby that we lost, James Allen, and Kent Virgil. And
All Burgess.
all Burgess. Did I get 10 of us?
Yeah, it looks like you did a good job. That's good. So as a kid growing up with so many brothers and sisters, 'cause it sounded like you were kind of down towards the bottom of the rung.
I've always called myself the middle child.
Middle child.
You know, when you have 3, there's a middle child, seems like he's always the one that doesn't always get anything.
Been there,
Oldest
done
one's
that.
been there, then the other one, and they said, you can't be a middle child, there's too many. I said, well, I'm one of the middle ones amongst all of those. That's just my little joke.
Yeah. Well, so did the other, it sounded like there's quite a few years, in between like the very firstborn, Robert, and Kent. I mean, did the other kids act like mother and fathers and kind of boss you around, or did you have a good time, or what was it like with that many children growing up?
Well, with all that many children, you know that the older ones helped with the younger ones. And we now call our sister Wanda, but she's always been one of the mainstones of my life. She's been like my second mother to me. Mm-hmm. She's watched out for me, and now that our parents are gone, we really look up to her and her husband. And my brother Jack, he's always looked out after me, although we used to fight a lot. And but I'd say that he's just stepped up, and he's turning into our father. I can see how he treats people and how he takes care of the family and looks out after all the family, and he's always looked out after me and my children.
So you
been there.
So you got
to
Wanda
my first,
and Jack are the pillars still holding
yeah,
it all together.
still the pillars that's holding
That's
us
good.
all together.
That's good. So you said you married fairly young. So was that hard?
No, I think I was already could help Daddy out in the hay fields, go out and help rake the hay. I could help Mom in the house. I learned to drive early. I didn't get my driver's license until later, but I was driving at 14. And we just had lots of responsibilities, so when I asked to get married or told them I was engaged, they didn't seem upset about it, and because they knew I was capable of taking care of the children. I helped with my younger brothers. They knew that I was capable of preparing foods. I was always the one there for the last couple of years that would get up and fix my dad's breakfast for him and get breakfast for the children and get them off to school before I went off to school, and then we helped when we got home from school. So they had taught me all the responsibilities, so they knew I was probably fairly mature for my age back then. And met a young man, my husband Bob, worked at a dairy, and it was just for a single man, so he was there in Hanford. He found a job up in Fresno, California, for Dickerson's, on Dickerson Avenue. What was that dairy?
Start with an S. Sousa?
Sousa's. Yeah, Sousa's Dairy. So we lived up in Fresno at Sousa's Dairy. Then from there we moved to Joaquina, California on Curdy's Dairy. And then later on to Bill Clark's Dairy on 10th Avenue in Hanford. He provided for us because we were always furnished a nice home. And the kids had plenty out in the country, had plenty of friends to play with. And,
plenty of adventures.
And, adventures, yes. And it was a good life. Had a good life with him. But I'm sorry to say our marriage didn't work out.
It's okay.
But I have 3 beautiful children from that marriage.
So what was it like trying to raise 3 rambunctious teenagers on your own? Challenging? Trying? Rewarding?
I'm so proud of them. And I look back, I was I think, fairly strict mother, I thought. And, but we also had lots of fun. We used to go camping and to the Kings River and to the drive-in movie. We would just load up this old Studebaker station wagon, and they lots of times take their friends, and you could get in for $1 a night. We'd pop our own popcorn, take our party packed sodas, and we would head out to the drive-in movies and stuff. Plus we got acquainted again with my brothers and sisters and their grandmother and grandfather, and always been after the divorce, a lot to do with grandma, grandpa, and all the brothers and sisters and family. And we still do that to this day.
So, family important then.
Yes, very family oriented.
Good. So, I'm sure with just the way things were going, there's had to be some sort of a event or something that probably sticks out of your mind. It's just something that probably was too funny or something. And living in Ramona, anything ever with the family just doing something that was funny?
That was funny. I don't know, we looked forward to the ball games. Bobby was our pitcher and Stephen was our catcher. And they played with different games, but in the last there before I remarried and we moved to Sandpoint, Idaho, they were on Danielson's team. And it would very upset me when they'd start putting down the catcher or the pitcher. I'd go out there fighting mad and with the parents.
At a Little League game?
Yeah, Little League games. But anyway, I had a couple of really good baseball players. And then my brother had his son Mark there. And lots of times I would sit with them and my brother used to get upset. He says, "You can't be rooting for the opposite team when you're sitting here." And I says, "I'm rooting for all of them." I said, "They're all good." It didn't matter to me which team won. They're just all out there having a good time. And I was glad to see that. Got to go on and see the grandchildren play and baseball. And now I don't know, my son Stephen, he's played a lot in adult baseball since then. But anyway, my boys love the baseball part. They played up in Idaho when we got up there in school. Well, not in school, did you? They didn't have baseball in school, but Little League.
Babe Ruth, I think.
Babe Ruth.
Yeah. So, what was it like in Sandpoint, Idaho? So you moved up to Sandpoint with George then?
Yeah,
about
after-
1974?
Yes, I think so.
So what was that? So this is a dramatic change in climate, and I mean, what was it like moving from pretty much San Joaquin Valley, California, kind of a deserty, to a mountain, treed, I mean, completely out of your element? What was it like?
Oh, I don't know. My husband George was in the Navy for 10 years and got out of the Navy. And we sold our home in Armona, California. And we loaded up the station wagon, and he had a Jeep pickup and loaded up that. The Navy came in and moved all of our furniture up to Sandpoint, Idaho. We camped out on the way up, and it was just a big adventure for all of us, I think. We were all excited about moving up there and seeing all those trees and the snow and stuff. George had property, so we stayed with his mother for a while, and then we got a 4-bedroom mobile home and put it on the property. And the boys each wanted their own room. The children is mainly the one that helped pick out the mobile home, because it had 2 little small rooms on the back, a middle room, and then the master bedroom on the other end. And oh, did we have a good life up in that area. The only reason we left Sandpoint was all the lumber mills are shut down, and it was hard to make a living, so we came back to Tulare, California. George found a job in Hanford with McCarthy's farm. Michael was born a year or so, a little over a year, I guess, after we got Sandpoint. I worked at Sprouse Lights thrift store. I'm not thrift store.
A variety store.
Variety store.
Yeah. There in San
All the time we were there.
So how did you like the winters?
I loved the winters. I loved seeing the snow on the trees and the sun out. I think I loved it all. Maybe not the mud when things started thawing so much.
Spring break.
But the rest of it was just heavenly. Even when I go up now, I can't believe when we start getting in that area and all those trees, your heart just swells up and you think, oh my God, I think I died and went to heaven. It's just God's place to live. And Bobby's stayed there, never moved back to California. He made his home there for how many years, Bobby, were you there?
35.
35 years.
32, 35 right there. Yeah. Till 2007.
And then now he's moved over to by Caldwell, by Boise. I got to visit that area a couple of years ago, and that reminds me of Lemoore and Hanford area here with the farming and stuff. So I think he enjoys that too, because it probably brings home where he was, where he grew up. Like Hanford's Chillard's beautiful area. It's a changing place here in California where we live, because you got all the fruit trees, the hay, the cotton, the corn, the silage. I mean, it's just, when you drive around, you see something new all the time, what's going on in the valley. It feeds lots and lots of people. So I'm glad to be back to California, close to my family.
But there for a while, though, you moved over to Arizona, didn't you?
Yes, in 1995, my husband George was got disabled, and went off on Social Security. We sold our home in Hanford, and we went full-time RVing. Our son Michael was 19, and we traveled around for several years in the RV, and would spend our winters down in Arizona, around Parker, Arizona. And finally we ended up buying a home in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. And we lived there for 8 years until George passed away in May 29th, 2004. And I stayed there a year, and then I put the home up for sale and moved back in got back August the 1st, 2005. And stayed with family a little bit around, and then finally got into a senior home and housing. Got me a nice little 2-bedroom apartment here in Hanford, and that's where I'm living now.
With Michael. So Michael's
And
helping? So Michael's here to help, yeah.
And my son Michael's living with me at this time.
So, a lot of adventures.
Yes, lots of adventures.
So anyone particular stick out in your mind?
There's a few that sticks out in mind. One, when you children were real young, and we were going to the Grand Canyon, and we got out there in the desert somewhere, and it was so hot. We went into town and got Kentucky Fried Chicken and brought it out. It was so hot. We'd been camping around, had a big tent, and it was so hot that we just put the tent out, and we all put our sleeping bags on the tent, and we're sleeping out, just out in the stars. and I could still remember all these stars from ground to ground, every way that you looked. All of those beautiful stars out there in the middle of the desert. That was just unbelievable. And I can't remember how old your children were. Probably 4, 6, and 8, something like that. And maybe a little younger. I'm not quite sure what. Can't remember quite what year at this time. But that was my first experience with the desert.
So I know that when you were married to George, you guys lived down in Arizona. You like to go out and explore, I guess is a good word for it. So you guys did a lot of that down there, or just?
Oh yes, we went around a lot and looked at old mines. Looked around all through Lake Havasu and some of the other towns. They have Havasu Pine Mountains was over by Kingman, so we go up when we get real thirsty from the desert and wanted to see some forest. We go up there, see the forest and stuff. When we got lonesome to see cotton growing or see some fields, because that's what I grew up here in California. Then we go over towards Laughlin and Needles, and Laughlin's in Nevada, and Needles and Bullhead's in Arizona, and we could see the cotton fields, watch them mow the hay, smell the hay, and so that was sort of get you over being so homesick away from home. We were only 6 or 7 hours from California, but that was still not the same as being right here. We traveled quite a few different places. We got to go up to Canada. We were visiting with Bobby, and Bobby says we should go to Canada. And we had the Automobile Association had mapped out our trip, and we had this little book and it was all mapped out how we were going to go. We changed that and we went up to into Canada and up to Florence. What was that? Florence Dam and Bath, and yeah, and some hot springs, and it was a lot just like northern Idaho, but still beautiful. The waters though was like real white, the rivers and stuff, I guess from a lot of the snow. I don't know why it was a different color. But we got to go to also to Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, Yellowstone.
So how was it like traveling with George? Because I know George just didn't like to stop. He was kind of one of those kind of guys that gets behind the wheel and you stop when you get there. So I mean, did you get a chance to stop and see some of these sites, or did you just kind of blow right by them?
A few times, but mainly we'd start out from Arizona and you'd lots of times come through California and visit. Then we would head out and go until, usually stop at by Redding and spend the night. And sometimes we would get to Pocatello. Sometimes we would get all the way in. He drove it just like he did a car. He drove it till he was too tired. We just keep going. We'd stop and get back there and get something to eat out of the RV and use the bathroom lots of times at the shorts, the truck stops. But no, he wasn't one that, he was going to get to the place he was going, then we're going to stop and see things. And we got to see over in Colorado. What was that? All of the arches and in Zion Park, Zion, and there's another
Seven
one
Falls.
too.
There's Bryce, there's...
Bryce, yeah, Bryce and Zion. Oh, Mother Nature just put some beautiful sights out through there.
So it sounds like you guys had a good time.
Yeah, we had a good life traveling.
Well, how did you meet George?
Well, George was in the Navy, and at the time it was during the Vietnam War. And I worked at the Navy Exchange, was my full-time job. And I was always hanging around with a friend down at the it was a liquor store and a nightclub called the Armona Club. So finally the manager asked me if I wanted to come to work part-time. They had country and western music, and they would have special people come in on the weekends. And it started out that I'd go help, so I would go in and serve drinks and make a little extra money. And I met George Neer there. And I was trying to hook him up with my girlfriend, which is my sister-in-law's sister. We ran around together. We were both divorced. And I said, you should, he seems like a nice guy. I think you should meet him. And so she finally met him, and she told me, he says, he's not interested in me, he's interested with you. So when he finally asked me about going out on a date, I told him for a weekend, I says, the children and I are going to the drive-in to see a Walt Disney movie. And I says, would you like to go with us? And so our first date was taking the 3 children and us, and we all went out to the drive-in theater between Hanford and Armona. I lived in Armona, California at that time.
Sounds like a
And
pretty
so,
exciting thing.
anyway, it ended up and we dated for close to a year, and then ended up getting married in February. He got out of the Navy in December, the end of December, and we got married in February, and it was the 16th, not realizing at the time that it was my older sister's anniversary also. So we got married on their anniversary
What year?
in 1973.
So, that's kind of like the story about taking your kids on a date. So your kids are now going to be teenagers, aren't they? Or close to it?
Yeah, they were 10, 12, and 14
Yeah.
when I met George.
How'd they take to him?
They seemed to take to him pretty good. He would come over and he'd say, okay boys, we're going to mow the lawn. And he'd get the boys out and mow the lawn, and says, and we're gonna wash the cars. And so they'd wash my car and his pickup. And Mom and Kathy could clean the house and do the laundry. And then lots of times they would come in and start helping do the laundry. And so he just stepped right in and started being like a father figure or something to him. And I asked them if, got their permission before I agreed to marry him. And all 3 of the children were in our wedding with us. So it was a family agreement that we take George into our life. It was a little difficult for us to, after we got to Idaho, we had some ups and downs throughout our lives like any family. And I was expecting Michael, and I remember we were having problems. And I went down to talk to the doctor. I believe I took the children with me, and we all talked to the doctor that was taking care of me for the pregnancy. And he says there were 4 of us and only 1 of George. And he told us all that we better, he was a good man to take on me and 3 children, and that we should all try to look at his side of the things and try to work things out. And so he sort of gave us all a coming ups on how we should do this. We were used of each other and used of everyone's ways because we'd been just the 4 of us for about 6 years before I met George. So it was hard for us to come in and let a man come in and try to tell us what to do. And but we worked everything out, and George and I were married 32 years
Wow.
before he passed on.
Wow.
As you could probably tell, he probably was the love of my life. I'm telling you more about him than I am the children's father. But I guess these are the ones I remember with this, with getting older.
So, you got 4 children, 3 boys and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Grandkids?
Oh yes, do I have grandchildren?
You do. Haven't heard anything about them yet.
Well, I have 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. I had 2 granddaughters in the same year. I was lucky enough to get one born in February, and the second one in September of the same year. Got 2 granddaughters, but don't ask me the years right now. And then I got the first granddaughter belongs to Bob and Jerry. Second granddaughter belongs to Stephen and Karen. Then I got a couple of years after that, got Michelle from Bobby and Jerry, and maybe 3 years or so after that I got Brett, a grandson from Stephen and Karen. And several years after that, then I got Raleigh for my daughter, Kathy and Eddie. And then family kept growing. They eventually started getting married, and now I got Nathan, my first grandson from Candace, and Jimmy, and now I got a brand new granddaughter from her that I haven't got to meet yet in person, and Piper, and she's what, about 5-6 months old? 7 months old. And then my granddaughter Amber has Lily, and she's the oldest granddaughter, and she's going to be in the 3rd grade this year. And that granddaughter just remarried a couple of years ago, and now they're expecting their first child, so we're going to have another grandbaby in around Christmas time this year. So everyone's all excited about that, especially Lily. She's so happy to have a daddy, and she's so happy to have now a brother or sister on the way. And we're all happy for the young couple. Michelle and Drew, been married about 2 years. About 2 years. I haven't heard any news there, but I'm hoping that they're going to get me some grandbabies also. Because my mother used to tell about how precious the grandchildren were, then the great-grandchildren, and then she got some great ones. And now that I'm older, I can understand how I don't know what makes them so smart or so beautiful and so special, but now I know how my mother felt about these great grandchildren and babies coming along.
So you did you get a chance to visit with Steve and Karen's mostly, with Amber and
Yes.
Brett and Lily and John?
Yeah, the grandchildren and great children of Stephen and Karen's, Amber and John, and Lily lives in Fresno. Brett's going to school in Santa Barbara, so I get to see him when he's home on breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Riley lives in Tulare with his dad and grandmother. I get to see him. He gets to come and spend time with me. And I don't get to see Candace and Michelle much, and not the grandbabies. But when we were traveling and RVing, Candace and Michelle, we got to get acquainted because we had always lived in different states. And we would go up and spend the summers up in Idaho by my son's Bobby's or by George's mother and his brother Dick. And we would get to spend several months RVing, and my granddaughters Michelle and Candace, we just picked up this communication, this we just attached to each other and got that special bond that we had never had. I got special bonds with the other grandchildren, but these girls were just beginning to get into their preteens and then in their teenage years. And Grandma and them just bond. And I just love them so much, and I'm so happy for what's happening in their lives, and that they're now got to go to their weddings and participate in that and see them get married, and that just, I'm just so proud of them. And I wish that I lived closer enough so that I could get to know the grandbabies and hold the grandbabies and help take care of them. But that isn't life. We live in two different states. But they know that my heart's there with them anyway.
Well, when your family moved down from Oklahoma, now your grandmother, Oni Lancaster, I mean, did you know any of your grandparents?
No. Looking back recently, studying it, I guess Grandpa Lancaster was already passed on, and Grandma Lancaster was still alive, but she lived with my Uncle Guy and Aunt Armidi. So if she came out to California, I must have been real young. I don't ever remember seeing her. So as far as my mother's side of the family, I didn't get to know those grandparents. But my grandma and grandpa Burgess, I did get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
They would come out to California ever so often, and they have a big family, got lots of aunts and uncles on both sides, and we're real close.
Mm-hmm.
But I can always remember my grandma Burgess when I was young. She had all of these braids that they braid her hair and put it down. And I can remember when she'd comb it out, it would just be past her waist, and her combing that beautiful black hair and stuff. And Grandpa Burgess, he would say little riddles. I remember him telling us children little riddles, I guess you taught, like Peter Piper picked a pepper, pack of peppers, or anyway, there was different ones, but I still sort of remember that one from him. But at least we got to know. I did have a grandma and grandpa that I grew up with.
Well, your dad had a Frank Burgess, George Franklin Burgess. He had a couple of, I don't know, maybe as a grandson to him, you know, it seemed to me he had a couple of quirks, you know, like his sneezing and you know, some of his mannerisms that, you know, we remember. Do you remember a lot of that, or do you remember some of Grandpa, your dad's, you know?
No, I can't remember too much. My dad was always a real patient person, and took time for us children. You know, I could remember growing up, especially in the winter months, because a lot of the family did farm labor, and his brothers and their wives and families would come over, and they would play cards, but they would let us children sit around the table and watch them, and they would teach us how to play cards with them. And we always just had lots of friends around. We had, even though there was 8 of us actually grew up together, brothers and sisters, we lots of times had other family members living with them. Mm-hmm. And Mama would just take in, Daddy would just take in any of them. We had Vernon Joy that lived with us. I heard that we had Ray live with us when Bob and Wanda Maxine were teenagers. And then I found out recently that Uncle Joe, when we lived in Joaquin or someplace in Tulare, that Uncle Joe lived with us. That was Daddy's youngest brother. Mm-hmm. And so we had a cousin named Tommy that lived with us. And Tommy and Vernon was Uncle Elmer's boys. And him and his wife had divorced early, so in life.
And Uncle Elmer was whose brother?
Daddy's brother.
Okay. Well, growing up with that many children, and it sounds like the job, you know, being a farmer, you know, you work through the summer and, you know, spring, summer, fall, but winter could be possibly slow.
It was slow.
Was it challenging with the money? I mean, it seems like Grandpa wasn't rich, but everything you had clothes, you had food. I mean, what was it like providing for a family that size with, you know, sporadic income?
Well, my brothers and sisters, we talk about this now that we're all in our 60s and 70s, and about growing up, you know, around. But all the friends and family, Mom and Dad made friends when they first got here from Oklahoma, out on the ranches. There's lots of other families live there. Sometimes other family members, the Lancasters or the Burgesses, would also, out at Joaquina, Burgess and Lancasters all worked for Ray Osteen out there. So we all had working, you know, we all grew up together knowing each other. Mm-hmm. And had big families. Uncle Guy Lancaster and Aunt Armette and us, so we were always close. But you visit back and forth then. You visit on the weekends, you visit in the middle of the week. You know, we didn't have TVs back then. Mm-hmm. And so all of you got together. Everyone that we knew was in the same thing as us. So we don't remember being poor. We had clothes. They were always clean. You know, we had things.
About Christmas.
We always had Christmas. You know, there was always a stocking there. We would get, of course, our daddy's biggest sock. So we would get full, you know, with candy and nuts and apple and an orange.
So it was kind of
And
trying to find the biggest sock you could.
Yeah, so we'd always get one of Dad's big old socks. And, but really we didn't realize that, you know, we knew there were people better off. But we didn't know it. We just grew up, we just...
Let's take a break for a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Well, again, Mom, I want to say thanks. You know, we took a little bit of a break, actually a day now. But we're going to come back in and pick up this conversation with Bonita, Geraldine, Neer, Schoonderwoerd, Burgess. So let's just get all this out of the way. And so we've had a lot of time in the last day to kind of think about things, think about life. And I guess you have some photos you want to share with us?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of move closer. So I'm going to come over. Okay, so let's see if we can kind of get this in perspective and some pictures. So I'm going to come down. So this is the first one you have. Let's see if I can get it without glare. Right there. Okay, so who am I looking at?
This is Grandma and Grandpa Burgess, Ollie and Thomas Burgess on my dad's side.
Do you have an approximate year about when they were taken?
No,
Okay. So Thomas and Allie Mae?
Ollie.
Ollie Burgess. Okay. And that's your dad's mom and dad?
Yes,
Okay. So George Franklin Burgess is mom and dad.
yes.
Okay. And what's the next picture?
Here's another one of them.
And this is taken a little later in life. Let's see if I can get. No, that's a little bit too close. Let me see if I can follow that just a second. Okay, and they're standing next to what looks to be like a 33 Ford. So probably in the Depression era. Okay.
And this was their 50th anniversary.
Do you remember the year on that?
No.
Okay, so they've been married 50 years here. All right. Okay.
This is my grandma and grandpa Lancaster,
So this is Grandma Burgess,
mother and father.
Oni Burgess, mother and father. Okay, so he was Lancaster and she would have been Flower?
Yes.
Okay.
And younger picture of Frank and Oni Burgess, my mother and father.
All right.
And here they are in front of their home in Tulare that we all remember so much.
So this was taken probably late 60s or early 70s. Or maybe in the late 70s, I guess. Okay.
What would you like to see next?
Let's see
Okay, let's see the brothers and the sisters. Here's Dad and the mom and my brothers.
So we have George Franklin, we have Jack, Jimmy, Kent, Virgil Kent, we have Grandma. Okay.
We have one of the daughters and mom and
Daughter,
dad.
so we have Laverne and Wanda, Geraldine, Jerry, Maxine, and Grandma and Grandpa, Burgess. And this one here, it says November 1957. So is this your wedding picture with Bob Schoonderwoerd?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you take this one out of the frame?
No, I think we're going to be good. I can get some of the glare off. And this is you and George Neer on your wedding in 1973?
3. And we'll show one of George in the Navy. He was in the Navy for 10 years.
George Clarence Neer. This is Michael Neer's dad and our stepfather. And here's a picture of Steve Perry, Kathy Schoonderwoerd Perry, Geraldine between them, Stephen and Karen Schoonderwoerd, and Michael Neer.
This is one when you came to visit one year, and all of the cousins, you and all your cousins.
So a family reunion at Mooney's Grove Park, and it has, looks like Raleigh, Bob Schoonderwoerd, Steve Schoonderwoerd, Brenda, with the hat in the back would be Brett. There's numerous cousins, nephew. There's Michael. There's Michelle Schoonderwoerd Nelson now on the far right, talking to Louise. Used to be Casey. Louise, what's her name now? She married David. What's her name?
Hernandez.
Hernandez.
Lisa's there.
Yeah. So that was a family reunion photo with a lot of cousins and nephews. And, so, the last day we've had a little bit of time of reminiscing on any other stories you want to tell, leave behind. Anything you, besides all the, we're talking good stuff now. Only the good stuff. We leave all the bad behind us.
Well, we've been remembering a lot of the good stuff. I don't know, we've had so many good times in our lives. I still think the main ones is like that we can probably remember the most fondest one before you moved away. But of course, when you would come back for visits, was always going to mom's and dad's. Seems like everybody went to mom's and dad's house on Sunday. Mm-hmm. We didn't always get to go because I worked lots of times. My job was always into retail, so I had to work lots of times on the weekends, so we didn't always get there. But the cousins would all play and get together and have a good time. The men folks would always sit down. Nothing would make our father happier than a bunch of the different ones to sit down and play a game of Penny Annie with him. And didn't matter what age.
Or dominoes.
Or dominoes, yeah.
Boy, he loved dominoes.
Yeah, he loved dominoes. And as parents, as women then, would all get in and fix a big dinner and get the kids a plate, and they'd scatter all over the house and out in the yard with their food. Get the men to eat, then we'd get them out of the kitchen, and then us women we would be the last ones to sit at mom's and dad's table. And whatever was left, that's what we would get to eat. And we could take our time and enjoy ourselves before we had to get up and do the dishes. Of course, the men lots of times would set up a card table in the living room or try to rush us out of the kitchen so they can have the big kitchen table. We got many of pictures of the families with them sitting around the table playing their cards. And I think the family get-togethers are probably some of my fondest memories. We still have those now. We just last Saturday had a family reunion on the Burgess side. We had one aunt there that we celebrated her birthday. She's 85 years old, Judy. She lives up by Reno. And her brother Joe, which is the baby of the 10 children of my father's brothers and sisters. He came from Oregon. And we had a large family get-together at Mooney's Grove. And just remind us of all the love of the family and friends. On Labor Day Sunday, the Sunday before Labor Day, been 40-some years, we have a Lancaster family reunion. My mother was the youngest of all of her brothers and sisters. I'm sorry, we didn't count back how many, for sure how many brothers and sisters my mother had, but 8 to 10 I would say offhand right now.
I'm sure she told me when we taped.
But we still have that family reunion. Now us cousins are in our 60s, 70s. We have some of our cousins now in our 80s. That family reunion on the Lancaster side has been going on for over 40-some years. And so ever who listens to this, always remember you're part Lancaster, you're part Burgess. So if you ever hear about any of these family reunions, we would love for you to come and join in. And we hope that some of the pictures survives, that in future generations you will see what we mean about the family reunions. I got a thing that I put together with some pictures. So before Bobby closes, there is a few get-togethers on there. And I'll see if Bobby can zoom in on those and get them and let you know that this family, both Lancasters and Burgesses, are all about family togetherness and the love of family. And when you don't come around your family and visit and get to know your cousins and your aunts and your uncles, you're missing out on a lot in life, because they can tell you a lot. And you can see how they live and what they bring, and you can see everyone that you would talk to would be able to tell you what a precious angel they thought my mother, Oni Burgess, was. Take anyone in, even though she had 8 of us children, she always had room to bring someone else's children and let them live with us and take care of them. And all the aunts and uncles family remembers that. So I hope that all this love and caring, that sometime in your future that you'll say, oh, someone will say, oh, you're like Grandma Burgess, or you're like Grandpa Burgess, or so either one, you would be like a Lancaster or a Burgess. So don't think of it as a compliment. And I'm glad I got to share our life with you. I wish all of you just peace and love and happiness throughout your lives. And if Bobby will pause, I'll go get those pictures real quick.
Take a small. Okay, we're gonna pick back up again, and so Jerry, you wanted to show us a picture of. So who's this right here?
This is my oldest brother, Robert Franklin.
So of the
Mom Franklini's firstborn was Robert Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
We called him Bob. This was when he was in the service
During Korea.
during the Korean War.
Okay. And he passed away, did he not?
Yeah, he passed away a couple of years after he came home from the war.
And then you have a big poster board here.
And then here's younger ones of Bob. It's my brother Bob Young, probably 16 or 18, high school picture.
And is that Bob Walton? Or?
Bob Walton.
And that's your sister's husband.
Yeah, Wanda's husband.
Okay. So then we have a poster board here just with a lot of pictures. We're just kind of, so what are we, just real quick, what are we looking at?
Well, our grandma and grandpa Burgess, and then their children, and then just a bunch of family get-togethers, as I explained to you earlier. That family is very important, and we did have a lot of family gatherings, and this is some of our fondest memories. Is is how close our mom and dad taught us to the love of family and friends getting together and sharing our life.
So as you're watching this, just remember, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your relatives, so there's...
Talking about picking here, they're picking cotton up here.
Oh, see that one. Let me come up to that one. This is probably back in, is that taken probably Oklahoma or California?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. You know anybody in that picture at all?
Grandpa Burgess, Uncle Elmer, and my dad, and one of the younger brothers. As best we can remember.
Okay.
Can you put this down?
Yeah, you set her down. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up totally now. And again, I want to say thank you very much for this time. It's kind of nice always going down memory lane and remembering all the good and even sometimes the bad, but it's important that we do remember the family, and that's why we're taking this time right now. But again, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it, and thank you so much. So you get the final word.
Bobby, I appreciate you taking the time to do this and us being able to reminisce about good times and bad times over this last few days that we've been spending together and thinking about putting this together for the family. I thank God every day for my life and for how you children turned out. I'm very proud of each and every one of you. Proud of all the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. And all of my brothers and sisters that are always here for us, and that, as you remember, especially after I got a divorce from your father, that some of the aunts and uncles were always there for us. We could always turn to them. Even to this day, we sometimes turn to them for help. And we just ask that God bless each and every one of us. Keep us in His hands and watch over all of us. I know that your family's going through bad times right now. And Jerry, our thoughts are with you at this time, what you're going through with your family. Jack and Joanne, the rest of the family. But I really have enjoyed this time with you, son. Thank you for coming, and thank you for recording this.
Well, I'm going to break my normal tradition. I'm going to give you a hug.
love you. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.